Thank you. It's quite fun to be on this side of the stage. So I'm Nico, I'm French, as you might be able to hear it. I'm sorry for that accent, but it's cute, right? So let's start. So I work at Mailjet. I lead everything that is responsive email. So this includes MJML. Who knows about MJML or has heard of it? Or okay, cool. Who uses it? Nice. So let's start with a little introduction. The story behind MJML actually started with an internal story because at Mailjet we have a drag and drop interface, a WYSIWYG interface that looks quite easy. You have like some visual elements on the left. You can just take them and drop them on the right to build your responsive email. So like this, it looks simple, but as a developer who works on the application, it's quite messy. Why? Because a simple visual element like a button, in terms of HTML, CSS, in terms of code, it's very messy. You have inline styles, you have conditional comments for Outlook, you have media queries, and when you have to manipulate this code, to troubleshoot this code, to update it, it can quickly get complicated to do what the user wants. So what we did is we created a layer of abstraction that we called MJML that generates responsive HTML. The point with that is that when you have a simple visual element, like a button, you also have simple code. One visual element is one line of code or like a very little number of lines of code and just simple attributes. When you decide to have a background color on your visual element, it's set only once. You don't have to set fallbacks or everything. It's all included. So the approach is to keep your code clean and simple and to have a semantic syntax. So it's really thought for email. What it looks like is usually when you build an email, you think in terms of rows. So you start with rows. For those rows, we have a markup tag, which is called MG_section. And in those rows, you will be able to add then columns that will create the layout for your email. So for example, in this layout, we have one blue section, one green section. In each, you have, in the first one, 2 columns, and in the second one, you have 3 columns. So when you create this kind of layout, you would have to think about how you want this layout to actually render on mobile clients. With MJML, it's included by default. It's responsive by default. So this is how it will render. If we look at the code, this is a simple example of the code. Not sure if the GIF is playing. GIF. So if you look at it, we have in the code one section, line 5 to 12. It's the first section, and we have 2 columns inside. You can notice that we don't even set the width of the column. It's responsive and fluid by default. So you don't even have to set it. If you want different sizes for your columns, you can still set them in terms of width of percentage or pixels. And you can see that on the mobile layout, they will stack once again by default. You don't have to specify this behavior. If you want to cancel this behavior, you can, but by default, you don't have to set it. So this is what we call MJML components, and there are all kinds of MJML components. You have very simple ones, so for example, a button, a text, an image, and higher level ones. So for example, social network components that will either redirect to your social pages or to enable you to share the newsletter or the template. With those components, we can also create higher level components, included very high level components, and you're able to create your own components quite easily. And they will be able to include all the media queries, the conditional comments, and the fallbacks. Here you can see that with only 15 lines of code, you're able to create a carousel. This carousel includes all the fallbacks needed. So for example, in Apple Mail, you'll be able to browse through the images by clicking on the little arrows. But on Gmail, that supports only the hover interactions, we hide the arrows, and you can only browse through the thumbnails of the carousel. Then in Outlook that doesn't support any of those interactions, you'll just have a fallback image that you can set up yourself. To do all of this, we have been relying for community. So being open source, It means that MJML is free, it means that you can access the source code, but it also means that it's easy to contribute. And that's how in like 1 year and a half, we released it in February 2016, so in 1 year and a half, we've got more than 200,000 downloads. It's been used by hundreds and thousands of developers. It's quite popular on GitHub, and we've had a lot of contributions. Among those contributors, I swear I didn't know they were part of these sessions, of this session. So we have Remy that has helped us a lot on the approach behind MJML, so which is mobile first and hybrid. Mark also, who had some suggestions about accessibility that we welcome and integrated quickly. And Stefano also, who is working on Mosaico. Who knows about Mosaico? It's a very, very popular open source email builder that a lot of actually, like some ESPs use this email builder too, that has contributed and with like integrating MJML inside it. Some email builders also rely on MJML, so all of those guys that integrate it also participate actively in the improvement of MJML. So get involved. If you know hacks, if you know ways to improve it, or if you want to share anything, you can join the Slack. It's open, so it's slack.mjml.io. We have more than 600 members, some of which are actually in this room. We have Dermot from Chain Reaction Cycles, and AJ from Ryanair also. There. So it's a very welcome and open community, like all the Email Geeks community. So feel free to join us. And you can reach me also on Twitter at Nico_G, and I'll be around and at the GIF booth, because we have a GIF booth at the Litmus party just after at 5:30. So come take some GIF photos.